All right, welcome back. It's the All Access Entertainment Podcast. We are part 2 this week with Mr. Tom Buchanan. I'm your host, Joseph Bruen, and it's a pleasure to have you back, Tom.
Yep, thanks for having me back. That was a good conversation we just had. Interested
really
to hear
was.
what you have next.
Covered some great stuff, and just so great to hear all of your stories and all the inner fixings of the WWF back then. And it was a great time period. So we've got some more great stuff to talk about. Sue Atchison, memories of her. She was a big part of the World Wrestling Federation and then into WWE and recognized just a couple years ago with the Hall of Fame. So let's talk about her.
She was there as long as I can remember. I know she had a start, and I probably started before her, but I don't know. She began in the marketing division and then became the person in charge of personal appearances for cancer kids and those sorts of experiences, which is really where she made her name. She was insistent on what she was doing. I think Vince liked what we were doing, and Linda certainly liked what we were doing there. But it was really Sue that drove that project, or those kinds of projects. And it was important to the company, first because it did help our image, but really because I think it helped the talent recognize how important they were. When you're a wrestler or a superstar, you're in this little cocoon, always traveling, and it kind of beats you down. But when you're introduced to a kid that values you that much, it opens your heart and makes you realize that it's not just a blank camera out there. It's real people, and you matter to them. So Sue really led that part of the company, which I think helped our character, helped us internally as well.
It's nice to hear. And I mean, these people were real life superheroes. That's what it was.
Yeah. Tell you my saddest story, the best story about that would have been in Wembley Arena. There was a child who had cancer and was supposed to meet, I think, Randy Savage. So we had this meet set up and I was supposed to photograph it. Unfortunately, the child died just before the meeting. But the parents came and talked to Randy about how much he meant. And I'm crying about it now almost because it was such a powerful moment. When you realize how a kid like that is influenced and how it influences the family and keeps the life going and gives it meaning and value. And Randy loved that experience. It was me too. Glad it happened. Glad they were there.
And nowadays for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, John Cena is number one. But in that time period, it was the Macho Man. I mean, he was one that was always taking the time to do that. And any other experiences with Macho and the kids?
No, Macho, that mattered to him just generally. He put his time into all of those kinds of experiences. There was another big promotion that he did a lot every year with George Steinbrenner, who owned the Yankees. Steinbrenner lived down in Tampa area where Macho was, and he ran an annual Christmas event. So Macho always went down for that, which is kind of cool. And
yeah.
Entertain the kids, and he did it just for him. Did an appearance with Macho, Yankee Stadium. Don't remember the year. It would have been early, 89, 90. I'd had a terrible skydiving accident. This is George Steinbrenner's story more than the Macho story. But I had a terrible skydiving accident. I was in a back brace. My arm was in a cast, but I was mobile. So I had to shoot pictures of Randy at Yankee Stadium doing batting practice. So I arrived early and was at the press gate and sat down because my back was so damn sore. The local security people wouldn't let me sit because George Steinbrenner might come and see you sitting down and he'll fire me for letting you sit. But I have broken back. I have to sit, right? This is like serious and bad, and I can't put my camera bag down. So they made me go away and sit someplace else. Eventually, I was able to hook up with Randy. We went into the building. We did batting practice. Then we're up in the press box, and we get escorted into George Steinbrenner's office. And he sees me with the back brace and wants to know what's up. I'm able to tell him that story about his security guy who wouldn't let the guy with a broken back sit down. And that's when I saw the flash of George Steinbrenner's anger that you hear about so much. And I'm pretty sure that guy isn't working there anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a fun trip, though. It was fun to be on the field with Randy Savage, who was a pro baseball player originally. So
Sure.
taking him batting practice with the Yankees.
You mentioned the XFL a little while ago on the last episode. You know, with the XFL, you said it was kind of right off the bat frowned upon. People were not supporting it. What was your take when that was announced?
Frowned upon, not supporting it.
Okay.
Didn't want it to happen. I had to be there and I had to make it work and did the best I could. We had learned a little bit, though, prior to XFL. If we go back a little further, we had a program called World Bodybuilding Federation, where Vince launched this whole bodybuilding thing. He wanted to take it to the level of world wrestling. And it was miserable. He brought in all these outside people who looked down on wrestling to promote bodybuilding and to promote a lifestyle TV show called Body Stars and try and take us in this new direction. They were arrogant and nasty. And it was a miserable, miserable program for everybody. So that went away. World Bodybuilding Federation went away. When it came time for for XFL, Extreme Football League, Vince had taken the lessons from there. And he decided he was going to hire outside people to do this, but he was going to hire them with us. So our task was to liaison with these other groups, with the other hires, assist in the hiring of the right people, give them our program, and then kind of monitor them, but they would become their own thing. So I was responsible for co-hiring a picture editor who would then handle XFL. So fortunately, I didn't have to do anything once he had the project.
And the last episode, you also touched on the Lex Express, Lex Luger, 1993, you know, that time period. What was Lex like working with? And kind of tell us about your experience with the Express itself.
Lex was miserable. He was one of the talents that I just did not like working with, and most people didn't. Vanity was his thing. To call him the narcissist was a perfect match. That was his character in real life. He really saw himself as a bodybuilder who wrestled on the side, I think. That's the way he treated us and everything about him. So he had a really good body, and he worked at it really hard. Like, he legitimately was in the gym and worked really hard. His philosophy was, this muscle needs to match that muscle. This little tendon needs to match. Everything has to be right. If I'm in this position, I have to be able to see this and not that. It was all about the body. It was everything from here down. To us as photographers in world wrestling, it was all about this. It was the character. It was the face. It was the way you interact with the talent, with the public. So Lex would get into one of these expressions. I think it was great because the muscles were right, but the interaction wasn't right. So he's hard to deal with in that regard. He was really specific about all of that. He's had a hard time lately, just personally. His life is kind of crushed a little bit, medical issues. And I think he's understanding that he wasn't everything he should have been back then. It would be kind of neat to chat with him again. You know, I think he understood what he was doing at the time. I don't know that he understood what we were doing.
Sure. One of the characters that were geared towards children at that time, like many of them, was Doink the Clown.
Uh-huh.
Now, originally played by Matt Bourne, and then went on to be Ray Apollo. And then, of course, there were some in between for, you know, a couple one-shots or whatever it may be. Steve Kern at WrestleMania 9, Brooklyn Brawler sometimes. But what's your memory of that character, Doink the Clown, and the transition from heel Doink with Matt Bourne to babyface with Ray Apollo?
I think the character is better as a heel, but on our show it worked better as a face. Apollo was more fun to work with, easier. I don't know what else I can say about that one. It was an undefined character, and it changed so much over the years, and it just felt like it began to feel like just a mask that anybody could put on. It didn't feel like a real character after a while. if that
Gotcha.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I loved it when he had Dink there as well, because that told you that this is fun. This is supposed to be an enjoyable character. It was an interesting time in World Wrestling, and that was the cartoon era, is what I call it, right? We had that ridiculous logo, and we had guys like the Goon and other weird cartoony characters to appeal to kids. It didn't work real well, and we wound up shifting into the Attitude Era, where everything was more aggressive and more real. So that's the transition.
And in that same year, 1993, Dink the Clown, Tiger Jackson, he started off as Macho Midget. Now
Okay.
that's a character that literally lasted, I don't know, maybe a month.
I don't remember it at all.
Okay, I was going to say, any memories of that?
Zero.
Yeah,
I
he was
like the
literally in
idea.
a mini macho outfit with a mask on. And I got to see that at a house show as a kid because it was Macho Man versus Matt Bourne as Doink and Macho Midget at ringside. And then Dink the Clown popped up maybe, a month later.
Huh, that's interesting. There was Randy worked with a midget out in California at one point too, on a program called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So we did a shoot with Randy at home, and Robin Leach, the host of the show, met with Randy in his palatial house in California, in LA area, which wasn't Randy's house at all. But he had a little midget as his butler who would carry things around with him and assist him and be his character. So we used a midget there. I guess we used one in TV as in his wrestling world as well. Didn't know about that one.
Midget wrestling was always a lot of fun.
God.
Especially as a kid. I remember the 1994 Survivor Series. It was the Royal Family versus Clowns Are Us. And it was Doink, Dink, Wink, and Pink against Jerry Lawler, along with Queasy, Cheesy, and Sleazy.
Oh my gosh. I don't remember that at all. I don't doubt it at all. I wish I could go back and be there for that. That sounds fun.
That was a great
totally
era.
Weird. I think one of my favorite midget kind of events would have been when I was a freelancer. I was sent out to shoot an event at I think it's the Middletown racetrack in Middletown, New York, just a dirt track. And we put up a ring there and we had matches. So it was your basic state fair kind of a thing. But it rained. So this ring was in the dirt racetrack, dirt everywhere. That's now mud everywhere. And we had midget wrestling as part of it. So we had midgets being tossed around in the mud. And it was just the most enjoyable mess of a show that I can ever remember.
Now you talk about lifestyles of the rich and famous, Mr. Robin Leach, his involvement with Wrestlemania. Any interactions with him?
I don't remember interacting with him at Wrestlemania specifically. I remember him being backstage. I remember interacting with him on that Randy shoot, but not WrestleMania, I'm afraid.
And how about celebrities in general? Let's talk about how celebrities have been a big part of wrestling over the years, mainly starting with WrestleMania 1.
Yeah, well, before that, we had the Rock and Wrestling connection. So that was huge, right? That was before my time, so I don't remember anything of that. WrestleMania 1 brought us Liberace, the Rockettes, and a whole host of other celebrities. So that was an interesting time. And then we worked with them on through the years in a lot of different ways. I think probably one of the ones that I remember the most would be Lawrence Taylor, LT, WrestleMania 11. Storyline here has to do with Bam Bigelow. There was an event a TV event in Tampa at the Sundome. And after the event, Bam Bam walks along the side of the ring and LT accosts him, and Bam Bam winds up pushing him or shoving him or punching him or something like that. And that creates tension between the two. And then LT sues World Wrestling or threatens to sue us. And then we decide we're going to settle this in the ring. So that brought us WrestleMania 11. At the time, LT was in a tough part of his life. He was running out of money. He had a former or current cocaine habit. The media hated him, really goofed on him. So when this happened, he got pressured by the media badly, the sports media. They tormented him. I'll take you back to before the event. We knew this was going to go to WrestleMania, so this is all scripted. We know where it's going to go. And we have to shoot promotionals. But we know we can't shoot promotionals when this guy is fighting us in court, right? So we have to shoot the promotionals before the event takes place. So the morning of or the morning before, we set up in a hotel room at the Sandals Resort Golf Course outside of Tampa. So we had a hotel room there. We had gutted the furniture out, and we were just waiting for LT, who would play golf and stop in at our room along the way so nobody would see it happen. He came in. He gave us, I don't know, 6 minutes or something ridiculous like that to shoot TV promotionals and the still photography. So I had time to shoot maybe 3 rolls of film, just bang, 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 no tests, no light checks, none of that stuff, just bang, 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 bang. And then he's out. And he was a pain in the ass to work with that day. He wasn't into what we were doing. It was a wreck. Then he did the show in Tampa. The media ate him up, and something touched him inside, and he decided he was going to make this damn good. He was going to make it work. So he worked with Bammer, and they produced a really good match. I thought it was a solid match.
Yeah.
Bam worked him really hard, trained him really hard. Like, you're talking about a guy who didn't want to be there at all, who was fat, out of shape, don't care. And Bam got him going and put together a hell of a good match that night. So much so that when the match was over, I went backstage right away to find LT and tell him, thanks, man. You really turned it around, and I appreciate it. And he was receptive to that. He was really appreciative. He was all blown up. He was huffing and puffing in really bad shape. He had worked really, really hard. Then I found Bammer and gave him the same kind of pitch. Thanks for pulling this together. And he was tired, like he had just worked the match, but not blown up like LT.
Right, right. I think famously that was probably, one of the best transitions from celebrity to in ring. That was great, and he did a great
and
job.
it almost didn't happen, right? He almost wasn't going to do that. I think he just felt the pressure of the media and decided he had to prove them that he could do this.
Yeah.
So it was a really good one. I'm really happy that worked out that way, and happy that you saw it that way too.
Yeah. And he had the all-star team with him, Chris Spielman and Reggie White, Steve Mongo McMichael, and a few others. It wasn't the first time that we saw football involved in the WWF. WrestleMania 2, of course, the big battle royal, and tons of great stars. William the Refrigerator Perry, Ed Too Tall Jones as the referee. Dick Butkus was there. What are your memories of that era, WrestleMania 2, and having all the stars there? And how did they actually mingle with the wrestlers? Was it an easy transition like the LT match, or was it chaos?
I don't know. WrestleMania 2 was a 3-town show.
Okay.
So I was working in Nassau Coliseum in New York, and Steve Taylor was shooting in Chicago, where that event was taking place, where the Battle Royal was happening. And then we had a cage match happening in LA. So it was 3 different towns. So all I really knew was what was happening in my town, in Uniondale, New York.
And a part of the same WrestleMania 11 with Lawrence Taylor was supposed to be the music group Fishbone. Why don't you tell us, there were promotional photos taken. We were ready to go, and then they never came. Why don't you tell us about that experience?
I don't know a whole lot about that one. Fishbone was a ska kind of almost rap group, I think. It's the kind of music that Vince McMahon would like. So Vince hired them to sing the national anthem, or America the Beautiful. It was all go. Everything was awesome. They came to the TV studio and shooted promotionals on video, and then they came into my studio. I didn't know much about them. I'd listened to one of their albums real quick, so I knew how to image them. Did a nice series of pictures of them, and then they canceled. My understanding is that Vince didn't like the version that they were going to do, or it may be that Linda didn't like it, but they killed it. That was a year that the Special Olympics were happening in Hartford. So Linda had a Special Olympian come and sing the America the Beautiful, which for me was a terrible letdown. I always thought that was a highlight of the show. See somebody like Gladys Knight sing that song, or Aretha Franklin. Oh my God. Boys to Men, even, just those kinds of celebrities sing pieces, just really, they mattered to me.
Sure.
Yeah, to watch, we had another one of those, Isaac Hayes, we had a fan festival kind of thing before the WrestleMania or SummerSlam, one of our events in Philadelphia. So he was the musical guest for that.
Was that the Rage party?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know nothing at all about music. I know I like Isaac Hayes. So I was standing there as his group was doing their tune-up, and it's a huge group, and they're all musically all over the place. And somehow there was a cue to go into the Shaft theme, and they all hit it, and suddenly it was music. That's the kind of stuff that just blew me away when I get to see stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now you talked about your first experience with Vince was, the photo shoot. First time seeing him, and obviously you've used his personal bathroom and had some interesting experiences like that. How about Linda McMahon? Your first experience meeting Linda and what she was like over the years?
So I don't remember my first experience. Probably at WrestleMania, probably at the after party, but I don't remember that at all. I think she was probably managing the show at Nassau Coliseum, but again, I don't have much recollection of that. I had to do a picture of Susan St. James in their skybox with Dick Ebersol, and I think she organized that one, but I don't have any recollection of that. The company hired me in 1987. They actually offered me the job twice before that. I turned them down. Finally, I said yes. Linda had approved it. It was going to go through, but she had also just hired a new human resources director. So I had to go down to Stanford and this performative little interview thing with the new human resources guy, and then met with Linda that day in her office. I don't remember it being anything special. I don't remember thinking that she's anything more than Linda, right?
Yeah.
So no recollection there specifically. The first solid recollection I have of Linda would be soon after I had been hired. We had a meeting of the magazine division to go over our production for the next month or two or three. The magazine was printed long in advance, or locked up long in advance of its publication date. So June magazine would be produced in February, March kind of a time frame. So I'm suddenly sitting in a meeting and I'm seeing storylines stretched out 3, 4, 5 months out ahead so that we could have the right stories to match what was going to be on TV, which was an eye-opening experience for me. So Linda was running that piece of the show. And I know she was looking at me as my eyes got big, like, oh, I get it suddenly.
Yeah.
When we finished that meeting, she sat down with me for a little bit longer and talked about money and my expense account. In our last show, we talked about how I had this almost unlimited expense account where I could do whatever I needed to do. She laid that out to me in that meeting. And I remember so clearly, she said, treat my money like it's your money. Just respect it. And you can do what you need to do. I'll trust you. Just be worthy of that trust. And then I offered her another option there. In news photography, we were resellers. So all of our expenses when we bought things from photo stores or whatever, we had a tax ID number and didn't have to pay taxes. Didn't have to pay sales tax. So I offered her that as an option at World Wrestling. And she said, no, I want to be 100% above board. Nothing that looks shady. No reason for the IRS to question us. We'll pay the taxes. I don't want you going in that direction at all. So it was an interesting way to come into the company, to understand how they were looking at money, and specifically how she was looking at money.
Wow.
My sense of Linda overall, very, very sharp, very, very smart. A little bit cold, but aware, very, very aware.
And is she somebody that people had to answer to direct normally, or was she more of like a, designating somebody else to do so?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like, when it comes to just something within the company that maybe she didn't like or something, is she going to tell that person directly, or will she have somebody else do so?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we look at, like, my sense of her role changed a little bit over time. Initially, it was Vince's company, and Vince is gung-ho, and he'll do anything and everything. Linda was trying to manage the corporate side of it. When I think of the two of them, she's the money person, the business person, and Vince is the creative person. Initially, the creative was way overwhelming, the business piece of it. And the company was growing enough that you could get away with that. When they started to hit on harder times, they had to distinguish their roles. And she had to develop the responsibility to manage business, and Vince needed to respect that.
Yeah.
So the relationship changed a little bit at that point. But she was always very much involved. The magazine publications was her baby right from the beginning. And that's why I had those direct interactions.
And Titan Sports had their involvement in promoting a boxing match, Sugar Ray Leonard and Donnie Lalonde. You had some experience there, you know, taking the photos. And why don't you just tell us about how that came about and what the involvement of the company was?
I don't really know. That would be a Vince McMahon kind of question. He wanted to get into boxing. You know, it's real sports, I guess, and it's Vegas, and he thought he could do that. There were a lot of other points where he thought he could overwhelm an industry, like take it over. NHRA was another example of that. With boxing, I think he just wanted to produce this match, this event, and see where it would lead. So that was his goal, I guess. I was an assistant to Steve Taylor in that studio picture of the two of them together. So I wasn't integrally involved. I was just an assistant to Steve. I had recently had that skydiving accident that I think I talked about in the last episode. So my arm was in a cast, my back was in a brace. And both of those guys were amazed that I could stand and was willing to keep skydiving and keep doing stuff. So we shot a picture together with me, with the two guys. Sugar Ray was somebody that I grew up watching. So it's really cool to have him in the studio to be a part of that.
Now, Steve Taylor and yourself, were you often shooting at ringside, you know, at the same time, or were you doing separate shows?
Initially, we worked. How can I explain this? Initially, I was hired as the ringside shooter, so he would mostly be in the studio and I would be at the ring. For pay-per-view events and major events, main events and such, we'd both be at the ring, or we put him at the ring and I'd be up at the hard camera position doing a storytelling shot. When he took over the wrestling operations division in about 92, 93, he had to pull back from photography a lot. He'd still make special appearances as a photographer, but then it wasn't as common. So sometimes we were together, but mostly not.
And once he transitioned into that new position, what were some of his responsibilities? What was he doing?
Everything. I don't know how he did it. Initially, he continued to manage the photography department. He was responsible for all the ring crews and all the referees and all the rings, getting all of this equipment and all these people to the right towns and the right places. And then he became responsible for front of house television production. So all the lighting, all the sound, everything that was happening in the arena. So his job just grew extraordinarily fast and broad. And at that point, he just had to give up photography.
We touched in the last episode on Bobby Heenan's show. Only lasted 4 episodes, but he became such an iconic commentator with Gorilla, whether it be primetime or ringside events, you know. Memories of Bobby Heenan behind the scenes.
He was like he was on the scenes. Like he was just always creative. He always had ideas. He was always goofing and laughing and making it fun for everybody. And often he was the butt of the joke, and he made it that way. One of my favorite Bobby Heenan stories is, and he played this several times, on an airplane flight. He would get up and use the bathroom in the back of the airplane and tuck a little piece of toilet paper hanging out of his back as he came down the aisle, and everybody would just laugh at him. And like, there's no benefit to him for that. He's just making people happy. Yeah, that's the Bobby Heenan that I knew.
And what was the pay structure like for photographers? Were you paid per photo? Were you on salary? How did that work?
I was on salary. I was a staff person, so I was paid a salary and expected to work at least 40 hours a week. Sometimes it was 60, 80, whatever. So it was just like any other staff position. All my expenses were paid. They covered all my hotels, travel. I had health insurance, all of that kind of stuff. Our freelancers were paid on a per day basis. So I would hire a freelancer at a day rate for a day and then pay them travel time, usually half a day for travel time. And then we'd cover their expenses. I would try and advance pay most of their expenses if I could, so that they didn't have to front us cash before billing. So that's how all that worked.
Now, you know, you've obviously have experienced so many different generations of wrestling. What would you say is your, and this is a typical question, but I like your opinion on it, Mount Rushmore? Now you can look at it different ways, you know, who made the most money, who was the biggest star, or just who were your personal favorites. But if you could pick 4, who would they be of all time?
Well, my era was really Hulk Hogan through The Rock. So I put both of those guys on Mount Rushmore for sure. They both influenced the business in huge ways and made a lot of money. And they were both good characters in the ring. I would probably tag Undertaker in there because his longevity was so long, and his character was so good. And again, he made us a lot of money, and he became a leader in the locker room, kind of the guy that younger folks could look up to. So he would definitely be a Mount Rushmore guy. I would probably take it forward to now and add John Cena. I've never had a chance to work with him, but everything I've seen tells me that this is a guy that is in that category, that belongs up there. And then I might want to go with somebody from WCW, maybe. And the talent that comes to mind there would be Sting, who again I never worked with, but he defines that era, I think.
Yeah.
So that would be my 5-person Mount Rushmore.
It's a great lineup.
Sure.
Without a doubt. Now, when it comes to basically, camera preferences over the years, I'm sure used a million different types of cameras. You've had hands-on. Do you have a favorite camera? And what are the different types of cameras that you used over the years, not only personally, but in different situations in the WWF? What did you need a different camera for?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. When I think back, as a news photographer, I used mostly Canon 35 millimeter cameras.
Okay.
In the news world, it was either Canon or Nikon. Those were the two mainstays, and they were all 35 millimeter cameras. Came to World Wrestling and shifted mostly to Nikon FE2, which was a consumer level camera. It wasn't a professional level camera, but it had a fast flash sync. It synced the flash at a 2/50th of a second, while most cameras were down at a 60th of a second. So it was much shorter duration and allowed us to freeze the action better.
Huh.
It was also a mechanical speed, so if the batteries failed, the camera would still work at a 2/50th. So we use that as our mainstay for action. We also had Nikon F4s, the top end professional camera. For most of our other work, we used a lot of Nikon lenses and glass. We had a Leica for a while. It's a small rangefinder camera. It's quiet, so you could use it on a sound set generally.
Okay.
But the lenses were good, but they were slow, so you needed a lot of light to use that camera. We had sound blimps. So the FE2 was designed to fit inside the sound blimp. So if you think about an FE2 being maybe that big, the blimp would be that big, and it would be padded with foam inside with a cover glass and an exterior button that would trigger the camera. So the sound was all contained within the blimp. So that would be used on sound sets where we couldn't make any noise, other TV events and whatnot. We had a wide lux camera, which produced panoramic pictures. I don't know why we didn't use it more often. Probably should have. It had a lens that actually rotated. So you push the button and the lens would turn on a spring, exposing a wide section of the film.
Okay.
So that was a cool camera. I used an underwater camera for World Wrestling at one point. It was a diva shoot, so we did a scuba diving feature and used an underwater Nikon for that. In the studio, when I started, we were using Veronica cameras. It's a medium format, makes a horizontal picture, I guess, on big film, bigger than 35 millimeter. Just as I got in there, I think Steve switched to Hasselblads, which make 2.25 images. The camera was pretty simple. They were 501s and 503s. They just held the film. That's really all they did. The power was in the light and the power was in the lens. The Hasselblad glass was really good. And occasionally we used a 4x5 camera. One of those old-fashioned things where the photographer puts a drape over the top and looks in the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, we used all those kinds of cameras. And then eventually we switched over to digital, or started to switch to digital. And that happened, 95, 6, as we started to serve the America Online project. We just needed to be able to turn pictures around right away, and they just had to be at screen resolution. So digital was okay for that at that time.
So you found the digital was a little bit easier?
No, I thought it was harder.
Harder? Okay.
Yeah. First, it wasn't as sensitive, and the images couldn't be blown up as much. You had to be a lot more careful about your light, and the images weren't nearly as useful. we were also limited in how many images we could produce at a time. Each card only held about 20 to 30 images, and I think we had 3 cards, so that was our max capacity. And then we had to dump them into a computer, but computers didn't have the storage capacity. So logistically, it was just really hard to work with them at that point. The images weren't as good and storage capacity wasn't there. It was a hard transition at that time, but it was a necessary transition. And I think we were on the cutting edge of that at the time.
You mentioned the Divas shoot underwater, where are some of the different locations that you've shot over the years, different types of scenarios?
Oh gosh, all over the country, desert, beach, whatever. The Divas shoots we did, the first one in the Dominican Republic, and then we went over to Jamaica, and our next one was supposed to be the Bahamas. We did them every place. I think the Divas actually started with Sunny, and that was a development that Sunny and I worked out in Rochester, New York. So at the time, Sunny was window dressing to Chris Candido. They were the body Donnas. And she just romped around the ringside area, and she wasn't happy with what she was doing. She thought she should be doing more and wanted to try some things. So she asked me if I would shoot some kind of beauty shots of her. So we set up a shoot outside the arena in Rochester, New York. She brought some outfits. It was sunset. I made some really nice pictures. It was the dawn of the America Online era, where we could put anything we wanted online. Nobody was going to question what it was or why we were doing it. And when we did that, people downloaded these Sunny pictures left and right. It was insane, the number of downloads that were happening. And we got paid for that. The America Online project initially paid us based on connect time. So the more time you keep people online, the more you make.
Oh, wow.
We got paid also for people that loaded our disc onto their computer. So generating these images was really profitable. Vince McMahon saw that. He saw the downloads. He saw the money that was coming in. He saw the way that Sunny was being used and the way we could use her differently. So he set up a shoot almost immediately after that at his house with Sunny as a voluptuous blonde, new kind of an out there character. It pushed the limits for us. I was there shooting stills. And typically the way this would happen is Vince would set up a shot for the video, video would shoot it, and then I would step in and try and shoot some other little things. And what he saw there was that Sunny responded to me, and we produced really nice pictures. I was able to get a different kind of energy out of her. So he had me produce a couple of those little vignettes with him. And then we did a shoot of Sunny down in Florida at Miami Beach. And Vince decided he wanted me to produce television on that. So I brought Rich Friedel along as the still photographer. I shifted into TV producer, and those images just took off.
Yeah,
and that was the beginning of the Divas program, and it grew out of Sunny's boredom and my boredom and our desire to try something new and different.
And who are some of the nicest divas or female wrestlers that you worked with over the years?
Sunny for sure. Like I really liked working with Sunny. I know other people had troubles with her, but I liked her a lot. Kat was awesome. Lita was fun. Gosh, most of them were really good. There were egos, it happens. But mostly it was pretty good.
How about the 80s? Wendy Richter or Fabulous Moolah, people like that?
Didn't work with Wendy. I did work with her a little bit. I don't have any real recollections of her. Moolah was good. I liked working with her. One of my favorite matches, I think, was when Moolah was working with Rockin' Robin, old time wrestler, new time wrestler, and the fans would just boo Moolah and yell obscenities at her. To see this old woman taking the obscenities directly from the crowd was just insane.
Right.
But I enjoyed those matches a lot.
And then there's an iconic photo out there of Rick Warner passing over the exposed film. It's WrestleMania 2. Why don't you just give us a little backstory on that?
Why are you saying iconic? What makes that one?
Well, it's become iconic, I guess, more recently. It's been in different news sites, and it's an iconic moment of the passing of the film. It's just one of those behind the scenes shots.
Okay, means nothing to me at all. I think Rick Werner was working for Canon Professional Services at the time, maybe Nikon Pro Service. Almost certainly Canon, though. From the picture, I think he's wearing a red fanny pack, which would be Canon. So he was just the second photographer working that show. Normally, it would be Steve and me, but Steve was in Chicago, so we had to hire somebody else, and it was just Rick. So we finished the show, and he was just passing his film to me so that I could bag it all up and send it to the lab. So that's the end of WrestleMania 2. And at that point, WrestleMania was moving to the other venues. So we got to stick around and watch some of that on the monitors.
And how about the British Bulldogs, dog Matilda, the mascot of the British Bulldogs? You know, back in the 80s, you'd have so many different mascots, whether it's Jake Snake, Damien, or Matilda, the Bulldog, or Winston. Behind the scenes, what was the Bulldog like?
The Bulldog itself wasn't a bad dog. It was dirty. It was kind of nasty for a dog. It wasn't properly bathed. They fed it absolute garbage, whatever they could, whatever was around. And they treated it very poorly, pushed it, kicked it. They didn't treat Matilda well. She traveled in airplanes not well. So you think of Matilda as being a celebrity, but Matilda was treated very poorly.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it really is. It was a stinky dog. There's a picture of me with Matilda licking my face. And I think that happened in the studio. It was a Steve Taylor picture. And it happened because what was going on there? We were doing a shoot and Matilda was not performing well. So we needed to calm Matilda down. And as the assistant, I just stepped in and tried to pet her. And she took a liking to me. And there you go.
Any stories of Coco Beware's bird, Frankie, or Jake the Snake?
Oh, Jake the Snake. He had several different pythons. So there was a snake handler, Albert somebody or other from the Greenwich area who had snakes. So he just brought snakes to Jake. And when a snake needed to be fed, it would get ornery. So it would be swapped out with another one. So there were several versions of Damien. There was one show where I think it was Chicago. We were doing a pay-per-view and we wanted the biggest possible snake we could get. So it was this massive kind of yellow snake. It was like this big across. It was wild. But we needed to make sure that Jake would be able to handle this thing at ringside. So pre-show, we're going to see this snake for the first time and Jake is going to get a chance to play with it and see how it works. So it comes out of the bag. The crew is lined up all around Jake. It's like a circle as everybody is looking at this crazy snake. It's huge. It's got it over his shoulder, and the snake is fighting him now, and it's strong. So it's fighting him, and Jake is going nuts, and he's spinning around. And as he's spinning around, the snake poops. Pussy, yellow, disgusting poop all over the crew. It was so foul. We wound up not using that snake and going back to our regular snake. So that was my snake thing. Yeah.
Wow. That's tremendous. My goodness.
Never would have expected. I didn't know the snakes did that.
Yeah. Now you said you weren't one to normally go, maybe to the bars or anything like that. Were you ever at any of the holiday parties, Christmas parties? If so, what were those like?
Christmas parties stopped, I think, before I started working there.
Oh, okay.
So I was at the first party I did would have been after WrestleMania. We had a big event at the Rainbow Room, which was this really classy restaurant on the top of Rock Center. Nice restaurant. For us, though, it was a pop culture kind of venue. So we were loaded with pop culture people. Most people in suits are dressed kind of nicely, but it was an MTV crowd. It was a wrestling crowd. It was a marketing crowd. It was a really interesting mix. So that was a fun place to be. And that's probably where I first met Linda McMahon and probably first met Vince, but I don't remember any of them.
Yeah. I
do have vague recollections of Linda McMahon dancing, but that's that. Next party or memorable party would have been, I think for Vince's 45th birthday or 46th birthday, 20 years in the business, there was another party at the Rainbow Room. So that was a black tie affair. It was supposed to be a roast of Vince McMahon, and it was a very private family kind of affair with television and stills there just to document it.
Sure.
Yeah. So those would be the two major parties. There was one after WrestleMania 3 that I remember. So WrestleMania 3 ended a little early in the evening, and then there was a party at a local hotel, like a standard after party. And then I remember one, the Super Bowl party. We were going to do a show in some town, and we had to be there before the Super Bowl. So Vince just hosted the Super Bowl party at the local hotel for the crew, just to have us all together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you mentioned WrestleMania 3. Probably the most iconic WrestleMania still to this day.
Sure.
Pontiac Silverdome, Pontiac, Michigan, 1987. Of course, Hulk and Andre, and you took that famous shot up in the crowd, up in the stands at the very top, kind of onlooking the whole dome. Why don't you walk us through your entire day of WrestleMania 3 briefly? What was that whole day like for you? How did it start, and what were some of the highlights?
So I don't remember a lot of detail about that. That was a long, long time ago. I flew in on a Friday night. I did pre-production on Saturday, so that would have been loading trusses with lighting with Steve and figuring out the venue and all of that kind of stuff. Show day probably would have been there around 10 or so. It was an early start time. My initial task was to shoot exterior pictures of tailgating and people waiting to get inside and waving their signs and all that kind of stuff. So that was a Linda McMahon request for a special in the magazine. So I spent the first part of the day outside seeing all these fans and seeing all the fans that actually couldn't even get in because they didn't have tickets. They just wanted to be there. Interestingly, when I brought that back to Linda, she found a way to just open the doors. Screw it, let them in, right? So we brought people into the arena that didn't even have tickets, just to give them the chance and fill it up. For the first part of that show, I was supposed to shoot crowd shots. So you're right, I went up to the very top of the building and shot pictures from there. I shot several different lenses. There are two iconic shot ones. One has been released as an 11 by 14 that hung in the office, many parts of our office. And the other is a promo photo that's 8 by 10 with the guy in the right corner kind of raising his arm in excitement. What was interesting about that is you couldn't really see the ring. And because it was an early start, it was still sunny in a dome. So you couldn't see the screens either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. As you were up there in that highest part of the arena, you could feel the crowd pop down by the ring and feel that pop roll all the way up to you. And then everybody responded. So there was kind of a delayed response up there, which I found fascinating.
What was
Later
it like
on,
having... Oh,
go ahead. No.
Well, what was it like having 93,000 people where normally a WWF would produce 15, 20,000, maybe 23 at Madison Square Garden, but 93? Was it really a big difference in person?
Yeah, absolutely a big difference in person. First, being up in that cheap seat, you really see how far it is and how massive this crowd is. And you feel that roll up of the noise. So yeah, that was the first big difference. For the second part of the show, I wound up at ringside shooting available light while Steve shot remote flash. When you were at ringside and the TV screens were rolling, you felt the entire power of the crowd coming down at you at once. It's a dramatic feel. It's not even a noise, it's a feel. Like the vibration hits you that way, particularly for that Hulk match. Oh my God, the vibe in that building, you wouldn't get with 15,000 people. It was that special. Yeah. So nice. I shot that match, shot the second half down at ringside. The iconic picture that I shot at the end was Hulk Hogan on the carrier holding his belt up. So that's one of my pictures.
Oh, great. That was iconic. So WrestleMania 1, rewinding a little bit, that was your first big show.
Sure.
What was that like with, Cyndi Lauper and Mr. T, and any memories with some of those celebrities, or just, how was security that night? Was it reinforced because of all the celebrities?
I didn't think so. I didn't know there was any security. I was a news photographer at the time, so I was accustomed to just going in the back door of an arena and doing whatever I needed to do. So I arrived down in New York City and found the loading dock, and it's a long kind of twisty ramp. So I went up the loading dock ramp and into the arena floor and found Steve, and he asked me if I got my pass, and I didn't. I just came up the loading dock. Like, nobody stopped me. That's just the way it was. So he sent me downstairs. There's an elevator that takes you down from the backstage area, and then there's a backstage door, and there was a packet for me there with my credential and also a ticket. You had to have a ticket to get into Madison Square Garden that day, even as a talent. It was the way they were tracking who was there. So the idea is you enter this backstage door area, you're handed your packet, and then you hand your ticket to whoever's doing the ticketing, and they rip the ticket and send you upstairs. But since I had already been in the building and came down from the elevator to get my packet, the guy thought I had already been ticketed. So he didn't get my ticket. He didn't ask for it. I didn't even know he was supposed to. So I wound up saving that ticket of WrestleMania, and I'll pull it out for you. There it is. The surviving ticket from WrestleMania 1.
Wow,
And
look at that.
Yeah, I don't know if you can make that focus. It's about as close as we can be. Yeah, so it actually says wrestler on it, and it has start time and the date and WrestleMania, not WrestleMania 1, just WrestleMania, because they didn't think there would be more.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that picture hung on my wall for years and years and years in my studio. And anytime Vince McMahon came by, he would look at it. Like you could see him looking at it. And he really wanted that ticket, but didn't get it. It's mine.
Yeah. So Howard Finkel famously coined the phrase WrestleMania.
That's what I hear.
When they were in a meeting. Did you ever hear any other names for that show before it was? No.
I was a freelancer at the time. I wouldn't have heard anything else. It was just WrestleMania. And I don't think that probably even made a registration with me at the time. It was just WrestleMania.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes different photos, depending on what ones you're taking, there could be a lighting issue in certain arenas or old arenas. How did you handle stuff like that? I know you said you had certain equipment, but were there some shows that were actually quite difficult to shoot that you weren't maybe expecting?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So when we did television events, we had lighting trusses for our television lights, and they went up about 25, 30 feet, and then maybe 20 feet out from the ring. So they had all of our television lights, and we just loaded our lights on those. So for television, our light was always the same in what television was doing. For non-televised events, for house shows, I had to carry about 500 pounds of equipment from arena to arena and set it up on the catwalks. Every building is different. Some are really tall, some are really wide, some are small, some are big. So each lighting setup had to be a little bit different. I needed to figure out where the power was, how much light I had to produce, and how to get it to the ring, and how to get the equipment up there, and how to do all of that safely. So every building was a little bit different. Some were easy to shoot, and I'd go back there a lot. Some were hard to shoot, and I wouldn't go back there ever. Some had really high labor costs. Some had low labor costs, but hard travel costs. So as I was putting a show together, I was looking at all the different events that we had, and how can I stitch these together from a travel standpoint? Which of these buildings will image well in photography, and what's the cost in each one of those? And that would allow me to build a schedule. So it was a complicated logistical mess trying to put it all together, but that was my job.
Sure. Now, obviously you met them early on, but as they got a little older, how were Stephanie and Shane McMahon backstage?
They were okay as kids. When they became adults and took over the company, they became McMahons. And they thought they should be McMahons. They thought they should have every bit of power and control that their father had and every bit of respect, and they hadn't quite earned it yet. And they didn't really understand what was happening elsewhere in the company. So it was difficult. Yeah.
What were some of your memories of the Golden Boy, Arnold Skalden, WWF Hall of Famer?
Never saw him work. Always knew him as the backstage guy who was smoking a cigar, playing cards, and carrying a gold Halliburton case filled with money. He handled the purse. So
Gotcha.
That was Arnold. Yeah.
The money guy.
The money guy. Yeah, it was. He would. Back then in the 80s and 90s, it was mostly a cash business. So the agent would settle up with the house, and frequently they would get just piles of cash. Then they'd pay the talent, so the talent could get a cash advance against their gate, and they'd get it actually in cash. So the agent was responsible for the money, and then whatever wasn't used was sent back to the office. So yeah, they were money guys. There was a point where I think it was Arnold couldn't make it back to the office in time and wanted me to take the cash back. So I had a Halliburton stuffed with I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, just like it's nothing.
Right.
keep it in the car and give it to somebody back in the office. And they'll sort it out.
Man. Now, some of the, most iconic names, obviously Hulk Hogan being right up at the top, as far as, as big as they get. But honestly, one of the most iconic names, Andre the Giant.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you weren't a wrestling fan, you knew who Andre the Giant was.
Sure.
And he's been on the, the Obey stickers throughout the cities. And he's just kind of, gone much further reach than the wrestling world. But obviously he became an actor and did some movie roles, commercials, television. But
Princess Bride, probably one of the best movies ever.
Right. Huge movie. That was very successful.
And a good movie to boot. It was just creative and fun, and his character was wonderful.
Right. And it's become an iconic film people still love to this day. It's not just, but, Andre the Giant in person, I've heard mixed stories. I've heard mixed reactions. He doesn't want you in the locker room if you're not, one of the top guys or whatever. But as far as photo shoots and your experiences with Andre, what was Andre like?
Quick, like he knew what he wanted to do and he wasn't going to give you anything more than what he felt like giving you. So studio shoots didn't last for a long time, usually. He was nice to me, mostly. I liked him a lot, but he could be very gruff. I think my first experience with Andre would have been at WrestleMania, and I didn't even know this at the time. He had a match with Big John Studd, and there was $15,000 on the line here. So he won this bag of money.
Right.
It was real money, and it wasn't prop money. It wasn't designed to be a prop, but he decided to goof on Vince. So he opened the bag and started throwing money to the crowd. Well, a lot of these bills landed back where I was, so I scooped them up real quick. Looked at my hands. I saw a $5 bill and a $10 bill, and like, whatever. I don't need this. I'm being paid for the show. So I gave it all to the fans that were behind me, and learned I'd given away a $100 bill and a $50 bill and who knows what else of Vince's money that Andre was not supposed to be giving to the public.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was a rib on Vince by Andre. And that fit his character pretty well. The other big Andre story that I remember, he was doing a series of matches with Ultimate Warrior, who he did not respect at all. Most people didn't at that time. And he didn't want these pictures out in public at all. Back then, we were doing town after town. The same match would play every place. For this match, Andre Warrior would be in the ring. Andre would come. He would duck under the ropes and then back off. As he did that, the bell would ring, and then he would get in the ring, and Warrior would squash him and pin him, and that was the match. And it lasted 12 seconds or something. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And Andre didn't want any of that to be released. So one day we were down south in Tennessee, I think, and he saw me there and was upset that I was taking pictures of this thing. So once the match was over, he's all bullshit with the crowd, and he comes over by me and grabs me by the throat and picks me up and thrashes me around a little bit with his fingers touching behind my neck, and then tosses me to the ground and then marches off.
Wow.
And that was Andre saying, yeah, you don't publish these pictures. I don't want to see you doing this again. So I talked to him later about that. Yeah, absolutely. It was, I'm sorry, that won't happen again. I'm fine with that. Later on, he did the same thing to a television shooter, an actual media guy who got inside the barricades in some town where he wasn't supposed to be there. And Andre trashed him and knocked the camera down, damaged the camera, and actually wound up being arrested for assault. And then the company had to settle all that. But it was the same issue. It's that he did not want this match image. Like, that wasn't the way he wanted to be seen.
Ultimate Warrior, you said he was a little, difficult. A lot of people have said that. How was he with you behind the scenes? Didn't
like him at all. One of two people that threatened to kill me. And if you threaten to kill me, I don't like you. That's kind of the way it works. This story takes place down in Florida. We're in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's an afternoon show. Bret Hart is on the card. Bret has just been made champion. And Bret has a very sedate kind of a character, right? He doesn't emote a lot. And at this stage, the company really wants us to get him out of his shell a little bit, interacting with the crowd, being more animated. So that was the marching order for Bret and for all of us to engage. So Bret came into the arena as I was coming out pre-show, and there were all these people around the backstage area, and they were cheering. And Brett put his bag down and he smiled and he went over and he high-fived and did autographs and just everything we were looking for. It was great. So I told our agent about that. It was Jim Myers, George the Animal Steel. And I asked him, please put this in the agent report back to Vince. So Vince would know what Brett was doing. He was really making this effort. And George said, yeah, but all of our guys do that. I said, no, George, most of them don't. Heck, Warrior came in just before him, shoulders hunched, just right by the crowd. Like what Brett is doing is really special. Let's put him over. Let's get him some credit here.
Yeah.
So that night we were in Orlando. I couldn't be there because I couldn't do double shots with lighting. George approached Warrior and asked him about his appearance at West Palm earlier in the day. And Warrior demanded to know who said that. And George blew me in. I told him that I'm the guy that did it, that told him about that. Wish he hadn't done that. So Warrior throws into a rage, stomps around the backstage area, picking up chairs and throwing them, flipping over tables, banged up a wall at one point, causing some damage, really made a scene and was fired within a day or two. Turns out he had failed a drug test, a steroid test, and it was his last failure before he needed to be fired. He probably knew that, and he was pissed off about doing a double shot, pissed off about a title change or a card change, and I was the last straw there. Yeah, so I heard that from a lot of different people. George Steele approached me later on and said, Tom, I'm really sorry that happened. Let me tell you what went on. I was talking with him about what you said, and he asked who said that, and I had to be honest with him. I couldn't not be honest. I didn't think he would respond this way, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And that was George Steele, or Jim Myers' character in person. He was I always thought, a very honest guy with incredible integrity. He taught me more about the business than almost anybody else. But in that moment, he got me in trouble with Warrior. I never saw the man again. Kind of glad about that. And I'm still here.
Right. Now, what were your experiences with the agents at that time? You had Rene Goulet, Tony Gurria, George Steele, Jay Strongbow, Jack Lanza. What were those guys like behind the scenes?
Well, we'll go back to the freelance days where I was just popping in and out, and they wanted nothing to do with me, especially Strongbow. He was arrogant about protecting the backstage space. Goulet at that point was actually working as a talent as well. So there was a show, I want to say Binghamton, but maybe not, maybe another town up there in New York, where I was at ringside doing my thing. His match happened. He went back and turned into agent mode and then called to have me brought back to him. And he just finger in the chest, like, who are you and what are you doing here? I showed him my credentials, said Steve Taylor, and that was the magic word. He let me be. So it was tough with those agents early on because they were so protective of the backstage area.
Right.
Guys like Jim Myers and Jack Lanza, especially, who you mentioned, really good agents who went out of their way to help me understand the business, understand what was happening in the ring.
Any personal stories of one of the most beloved people in wrestling, Owen Hart?
Oh, my. Yeah, how much time do we have? Owen was legitimately beloved. He was friendly and kind and always trying to make people laugh. As a photographer, he was fun because when his character changed, he would come into the studio and I could give him the space to try and emote in new and different ways. And he would, and we could work out what works live before my camera. So it was really fun in that way. And it was nice to see the creative side of him as it developed right in front of my lens. I'll give you my favorite Owen story, which happened in Kuwait. We were doing an appearance at a Burger King restaurant. It was Owen and Vader and a third talent who I don't know. I don't remember who it was. But we're supposed to have an appearance there, and it's supposed to be all set up. And 2 limos come, and they drop us in front of the restaurant, and we go inside. It's those 3 talent and me as the photographer, and also kind of managing the event, and a security guy, a local security guy. We get in the restaurant, and they know that we're supposed to be there, but they have nothing set up for us. There are hundreds of kids just all over. So we wind up grabbing 3 tables in the back of the restaurant, setting up a kind of space for lines. Security guy secures the bathroom, and that's going to be our safe room. It's got a window where we can get out. Our limos have already taken off. So once I'm set up with our talent, security guys trying to get our limos back. It's a madhouse. The talent are doing their best, signing as best they can, but nobody is happy about this. Finally, Vader just has had it. Vader gets up and pushes through the crowd to the front of the building where we were left, where we dropped off. There's no limo there for us. It's pushing the crowd away. Kids are shoving into kids. There are these glass panels between tables that are shattering like bullets, and glass is flying, and kids are screaming, and Vader is pushing through the crowd, and I have to go and get him. And as I'm doing that, the limos arrive on the side door. So our security guy hustles everybody else out, the limos. Owen and the other person get in the first limo. I'm able to get Vader back, get him out the side door to the limo. I get him to the limo. He closes the door, tells the driver to go, leaving me with this mob that just watched us desert them. This is a terrifying scene. Owen is in the front limo. He sees what happens, has his limo come back around, pops the door, and tells me to jump in, Tom. So I throw the cameras in, jump in, and we're out of there.
Wow.
So,
my gosh.
yeah, so that's kind of the Owen that I knew. That was a tough run. It was 5 days in Kuwait City. We were doing a tournament. There was a guy named Tiger Ali Singh, who was a new talent, who was going to go over. He was going to win the tournament. He was Muslim because he wore a turban. Well, he wasn't. He was a Sikh. And that makes a difference. But it didn't make a difference to Vince. He thought, turban, Muslim, and this will be great in a Muslim country. They had told us all along this is going to kill your house. The locals were saying, you can't do this. The promoter was not happy about it, but we did it anyway. We progressed the show. Tiger was not a good worker at the time. Terrible, actually. So he had a semifinal match with Owen, and Owen had just had it with this guy. So he started calling spots straight out loud, just so that he would know what to do. You could hear it from probably 10 seats out. Just made the match happen for this guy, and then enough, go away. So that was the Kuwait tour. Lots of stories out of that tour. But Owen was central to a couple of them.
Awesome. Now, internationally, what other countries have you traveled to through the WWF?
All over Europe, Middle East, Japan. Guam seemed to be a stop. Anytime we did Japan, we did Guam. That would be my package. I did not make it to South America. Did not make it to New Zealand and Australia. I wish I had. There was actually a point when we were in Japan and the Bushwhackers were on the card, and they were going home to New Zealand and wanted me to come home and do a feature about them. Like, they would show me around the country and we'd take some pictures and have some fun and all that sort of stuff. I was really tired. I'd been on the road a long time and decided I just needed to go home. And probably one of my few regrets. I wish I had taken them up on that offer and head down to New Zealand. I was halfway there.
Right. What was your reaction to WWF 1998 King of the Ring? Mankind getting tossed off the Hell in the Cell. Nobody knew it was going to happen. Mankind versus The Undertaker. Just seeing that visually has to be.
I don't remember where I was. I do remember the spot. I don't remember if I shot that from hard camera or inside. I would probably have been inside the cell. There was another one of those where a talent came through the cell. And that might also have been Mankind. But I'm not sure.
It was.
Yeah. Just incredible spots. Yeah. The one of those. So I remember being outside the ring for one of those, inside the cell. And David McLean, one of my freelancers, was outside the cell, was shooting from there. So the spot that we had to get was either coming through the top down or onto the announce table. I don't remember which of these two it was. But I told David that this is the shot that you got to get. And he was good with that. So the match takes place. The door is sealed shut, one way in, no way out. A cameraman gets hit. One of the talents slams into a cameraman and knocks him down. Now, I'm never supposed to be on camera. As this happens, the TV camera is on one side, I'm on the other, and the action is in the middle, and I see the tally light, and I'm on camera. So somehow I have to make this work. So I had to treat it like it was real, like my colleague has just been knocked down. So I kneel down with him and start screaming at him, and then turn to the outside and scream, he's hurt. He's really hurt. Get help. This is important. It's real. Get help. Well, David McLean is out there and thinks it's real. So he runs to get help. He goes to the back, pesters Bruce Pritchard, who's back at the gorilla position. Nothing happens. Eventually, they send medics. David comes back to the ring and finishes shooting. The match finishes, the show finishes, and David approaches me and says, I'm really sorry I wasn't able to get you help for that. I hope he's okay. And I say, David, there was one way in, no way out. We had to get a shot up on top of the cage, so the talent had to get out. How do you think that was going to happen? And then the light bulb went off. Oh, it wasn't real. And that's when David figured out what happened that night. So that was one of my favorite bits from that show. And I don't remember which of those two cell matches it was, but that little piece of sound made it onto the show, and it added energy and reality to it. It comes out of a Vinceism. Back when we did our very first live NBC show, we were all nervous. We had done pay-per-views that were live. We had done lots of live house shows and whatnot, and lots of television, but live network TV was a big deal for us. And Vince said, it's live TV, nothing can go wrong. And what he meant was, if something goes wrong, just go with it. The crowd wants to be on our side. They want us to succeed. So if something happens, make it real. Give it that sense of legitimacy. And that's the spirit that I took to that moment that gave it legitimacy and realism. So a Vinceism. Nothing can go wrong. It's live TV. Right. Nothing can go wrong.
Now, you mentioned your least favorite era was the New Generation, mid-90s.
Cartoon era, yep.
Yeah, what's your favorite era? Was it the Attitude Era? Was it the 80s?
At the time, it was probably the Attitude Era. I'm not sure if that's true anymore. I think we pushed limits a little too far, coarsened the culture, and I'm not sure I'm super happy with the way we did that. We were leading that coarsening, but we were also following the culture, which was coarsening on its own. So I'm not sure.
And in 2001, WWF purchased WCW, their competition. What was that experience like? Just kind of, I don't think anybody thought that would actually happen.
Yeah, it was melancholy. We were pitched in a huge fight. It was billionaire versus billionaire, and it was real. And I think we all knew and understood that only one of the two companies would survive. So when we purchased WCW, we had survived. It felt really good. We had survived. But at the same time, we knew people at WCW, and we knew what they must be feeling. So there was empathy, and there was a little bit of heartache there too. There's probably also a sense that as we combine these two entities, there'll be redundancies, and probably some of us ultimately won't survive. So there was all that happening at the same time.
Yeah, complex situation.
Yeah. Ultimately, though, I think it was relief. That was probably the dominant sense at that point.
It was a long, hard battle. I mean, that went throughout the 90s,
And a legit battle.
Right. Now, right after you left the company, WWF transitioned into WWE. What's your take on that whole situation?
I like the marketing pitch, get the F out. That was a good tagline. That was driven really by World Wildlife Fund claiming the copyright or the trademark to WWF. If we go back to the very early years, there was a legal case between the two. And the result of that by consent was that World Wrestling could use the mark domestically in the United States, but not internationally. So as we grew, we were using it internationally. The tip for all of that, the tipping point was WWF.com, because World Wildlife wanted that location, wanted WWF.com, and couldn't have it. That goes back to pre-AOL days, probably 94-ish. I was advancing the AOL project among the senior management team, and really wanted us to get WWF.com, even though we didn't have any use for it. There was an era of cyber squatting, of people taking a name like that, buying it for cheap, like $20 or whatever, and then selling it back to the company for millions. So I wanted to lock that up. so that we would have it. Management wanted nothing to do with that. They didn't understand what the .com era was. They didn't see it coming. So I made a deal with a guy in IT where I think I wrote him a check, and he was able to secure the title for World Wrestling. So it was that WWF.com that we secured to prevent cyber squatting that ultimately triggered the conflict between World Wildlife and World Wrestling.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of weird how that all happens.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you've photographed hundreds and hundreds of superstars. Who was your least favorite to photograph? Was there somebody that was just never willing to, make it work, or kind of hard to deal with?
I'll go with Davey Boy Smith. Just not fun to work with, frustrating most of the time, with other photographers too, I think. So he would be one that I would not want to have to work with. Some of the guys were kind of boring. Like, I'll throw Bret Hart into the mix a little bit because his character was so flat and so sedate. Like, there wasn't a lot to explore there. But at the same time, he was a really good person that I enjoyed working with, and he was honest and had integrity about his shooting. With Davey Boy, if I needed to shoot him, he would put me off. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I'll be there in an hour. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he'd lock up the studio for the entire day. With Bret, he would be up front. Tom, I'm not going to do it today. How about next TV? I'll give you 30 minutes. Right. So that to me is a better way of approaching an issue. So I've always found Bret to be very honest, lots of integrity, and easy to deal with. But his character wasn't a ton of fun to shoot because it was so the same.
Sure. You touched on Macho Man early on in our interview. Any other, touching moments that you've witnessed over the years in the company? Any heartwarming moments?
Well, we talked a little bit about the backstage Macho and the kid with cancer. So those would be the kinds of things that touched me. We did, I talked earlier about Kuwait. There was a tour there that was pretty impressive. We were there for 5 days, and in order to make that work, we needed a fitness center. So we did a deal with the Army where we could use their fitness center at Camp Doha. But in exchange for that, we had to send some talent up to the front line to do a meet and greet. So it's Davey and Owen and Bret, and I'm going along as the photographer and kind of coordinator of this whole thing. They've got a Black Hawk helicopter for us, and they fly us up to the front line. This is between the two wars. Kuwait has been protected by the United States. We're training their forces up front, and Iraq is being kind of held at bay. There isn't a lot of threat, but there's some. So it's a live war zone. We're on the front line. Helicopter lands. The colonel or whoever who's running that post, this desert space, gets in my face. His guys have just come off this heavy exercise. They're tired. We don't have any patience to be glad-handing a bunch of damn wrestlers. And he's like all in me. He's looking at me. I'm looking at the helicopter with their talent that just got off. And they're being swarmed by military folk who just desperately want to meet them because they've been in this big exercise. And this is a relief. It's something to write home about.
Right.
So eventually the post commander lets us go. He follows us as we go from one appearance site to another, and eventually figures out that his guys are really into this. This is recreational for them and it's meaningful. So we finish our thing. Our guys don't want to go. We're supposed to get back on the helicopter. We've got an appearance someplace else. We got to get back. They're not going to go. Talk with the helicopter pilot. Says, look, I've got this departure time. I have to meet my departure time. It's the way the mission works. If your guys won't get on the helicopter, I can't make them do that. Fly back to post. They'll send me back here to get the talent. We'll be fine. So as he's doing that, the post commander is calling to the base. We have a press conference going on there. The general running the base hears what's going on, throws 3 more talent in the helicopter, sends them up to the front line, brings back the first 3. They do an appearance. And again, it's the same thing. So the colonel or whoever's running this base, this post, is all excited about this. So much so that several days later, they get a Jeep and drive us back up for another appearance.
Wow.
And in that one, we were able to drive tanks. So we got to drive an M1A1 tank at the Iraqi front line.
Oh, man, that's an experience.
Yeah. So to see that transition from we don't want you here to we want you here, it was really moving.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'll give you one more little bit about that.
Yeah.
Later on, we did an appearance of some kind down in Texas at an Army post down there. And I spoke to a couple of the guys who told me that Bret Hart had come to their post on his own time just to say hi because he remembered them from that time in Kuwait.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so it affected all of us in a big
Sure.
way. From there, we tried to do more work with USO. Didn't work out, but eventually I think it turned into the support the troops tours that the company wound up doing.
Longtime employee, Frank in audio.
Okay, Frank Bullock.
Yeah, any memories of Frank? He was another kind of beloved behind the scenes, you know?
Yeah, people saw him at ringside and wondered, who is that guy and what does he do?
Yeah.
Right. He's kind of gruff looking, always sitting at the timekeeper's table. So when we did audio, when we did a TV show, there was a guy inside the truck who was working the mixers, kind of packaging all the audio together. But if anything was wrong or anything had to happen audio-wise in the arena, that would be Frank. So he had the microphones and backup microphones, handed them to the right talent. If any of the mics, any place in the building had problems, he was the guy that would fix it. So that was his role. I'll give you my Frank story. We're in Texas, in Houston, I believe it is. I had had bad ribs the night before. My stomach was just in horrible shape. I had to work, but boy, I shouldn't be. Thought I was going to throw up at any minute. So I threw a bucket under the ring, figuring if it comes, I'll just duck under and take care of myself.
Right.
So it happened. Live TV show. I duck under the ring. I throw up in the bucket. I come out from under the ring, and Frank is sitting there freaking out, doesn't know what the hell is going on. The guy in the truck called him. There's noise under the ring. What's happening? So the whole world heard me throwing up.
Oh,
and from that moment, I don't think anybody knew what it was. But from that moment, if I had to duck back under the ring, I had to eyeball Frank and just say, I'm going under. And then he could have the sound turned down on those effects mics.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the kind of thing that he did. Fix whatever might need fixing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just a beloved guy within the business. And,
sure.
You know, certainly be remembered. He passed away, unfortunately, years later. You know, great man. So advice. What advice do you have to photographers up and coming, just wanting to get into photography specifically, or maybe even want to get into photography to come into the wrestling world and do it there?
Photography world has changed a lot. Just being a simple button pushing camera operator, I'm not going to cut it anymore. I think you need more skill than that. I would say the first thing I would focus on is storytelling. Learn about stories, whether it's on movies or books or magazines, whatever. Understand storytelling, understand character development, and then understand the technology that you're using. Try and broaden your skill set, so it's not just still photography. You should have an ability to take that into video photography as well, maybe a little bit into marketing. So that's where I go to start with, and then build relationships, because as we talked about in the first edition of this, relationships are really what got us our freelancers and got me my job. So relationships matter too.
And what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be?
Hard to say. I made a lot of pictures, promoted a lot of good talents at the show. I'd say the thing I'm most proud of is the freelancers that I developed. The skills that I gave them, the opportunities I gave them, and the growth that they've shown over the years, whether it's Rich Frieda or David McLean or Jim Sully or many of the other lower freelancers who still use that skill to develop their own careers. That to me matters a lot. Over the summer, I was hanging out with Rich and his wife in their summer house up in Maine, and realized how long it's been and how happy I am that he's happy that he has grown children and that he was able to build that career and that life from that weird encounter that we had way back in '93.
And do you still keep in contact with any of your fellow employees from over the years?
Occasionally, mostly online. Occasionally I'll see them. I see Steve every year or so, Steve Taylor. I see Rich every once in a while, Johnny Giamondo every couple of years. Probably he skis, so he comes up to the ski area where I work. So I'll see him every once in a while. Communicate with some of the other folks. Yeah, so there's still some contact there.
Another pretty long time photographer, Johnny Photo. Any memories
Sure.
of him?
John Giamondo, yeah. He was an assistant and a photographer with Bruce Bennett Studios in Long Island. Bruce Bennett had lighting gear in Nassau Coliseum and Philadelphia Spectrum and Madison Square Garden and a couple other places. He was a hockey photographer. So he was team photographer of the hockey teams. And I rented his lights in Nassau Coliseum regularly. And John Giamondo was one of the assistants who handled those lights. He would turn them on and he would be available to fix problems if they occurred. So that was our first kind of contact. When we needed a new staff photographer, I called Bruce and asked who he knew. He recommended John. John came up for an interview. We hired him. Within a week or so, we were in the Bahamas or Jamaica doing a 10-day diva shoot. Like he pulled him out of Long Island and hockey, and here we are in Jamaica doing beautiful women and trying to make it all work. We threw a lot at John, and he handled it super well. When I left, he kind of took over what I was doing and then grew with it for another, 15, 20 years.
Now, when it comes to photography, one last question in regards to that. Promo photos, yourself, you're credited to, a million promo photos, Steve Taylor as well. Other guys, you'll just see, maybe a couple dozen. Some guys you'll see maybe one or two, like Roy London. Was there a reason that it wasn't spaced out more, or how did that process even work?
So there was one photographer usually who was primarily the studio shooter. So initially it was Steve, and then it was me for a while, and then I gave it over to Rich. So that's why we had the most kind of images. Roy London was only there for 5 or 6 months. I think the credits he has probably aren't studio. They're probably action or off the mat features. David McLean has a couple of studios. Jim Sully has some. So it's just the time frame that they were there and what the responsibilities were that gave them those opportunities.
And any memories of Richard Posner, the props department?
Mr. Magic, Dr. Magic. He could make anything happen. He was pretty amazing. He was, I don't know if you've ever seen the guy, balding head, always wore Hawaiian shirts. If you needed a prop, he had it. So he had initially cases of props and then a truck of props. So they would come to him at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and say, we need a Hawaiian scene, or we need an office built. And he would have to make that happen. So he was really, really good at that. Very inventive, creative, and industrious, and also just weird, happy, friendly.
Right. Quirky guy.
Quirky's a good word for him.
Yeah. And he went on to do, as a kid, I remember seeing him on the set of Livewire or on the set of Mania. He'd be one of those background workers, kind of just doing their thing, or the 1-800 phone line you call the superstars. He'd be there on the phone with them.
Yeah, we got pulled into that stuff all the time. So it wasn't uncommon for a staff person to just fill in on an on-camera shot. I hated doing that, but I got my share of them.
And he had a very short, it was brief, on-air role as Goldust's usher.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was probably pretty embarrassed by that.
Yeah. But pretty awesome, though. Mm-hmm. It's cool to see guys doing different things like that. I recognize that guy, But.
Sure. And I look back at those little spots I did, and I'm happy about them. I'm glad I did them, but I sure didn't like them at the time.
Right. You look back and, okay, that was all right.
Yeah, I don't like being on camera. I want to be behind the scenes. So if I got pushed into frame, I do it and I give it my best, but I was a terrible actor.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been an unbelievable experience to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Tom Buchanan here on the All Axxess Entertainment Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And I encourage you, the fans, episode 1, episode 2, we've got 2 up there, and lots of great stories. So definitely check them both out, and we'll be back with Overtime.